Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, can I kindly ask everybody to be seated because our session is about to start. And without further ado, I will give the floor to His Excellency Ahmed Al-Qasimi, the Executive Director of Hedayah. Ahmed, the floor is yours.
Distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by thanking the 5 co-hosts and co-sponsors of this event, the Government of the United States of America, the European Union, the Republic of Egypt, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates for hosting this topic on rehabilitation and reintegration and presenting the good practices and key successes of Hedayah. More of a personal story. In my former capacity back in 2014, I was a diplomat here in the United Nations working on Security Council Resolution 2178, which at the time wanted to stop the flow of foreign terrorist fighters to areas of conflict. In less than a decade, the threat has evolved so much that no one discusses the flow of people going into areas of conflict, but rather people coming back. So we as Hedayah wanted to solve this anomaly. Are countries ready to receive, repatriate, and rehabilitate and reintegrate their citizens? So 2 years ago, Hedayah launched here at the United Nations Hedayah's blueprint document on how to set up a rehabilitation and reintegration center. And the first copy of that blueprint document was given to the gentleman on my left to recognize his commitment in countering terrorism globally. 2 years from now, today, Hedayah is back again to show the world how that document that we launched 2 years ago has translated and impacted and helped rehabilitate people around the world. And this is what we will talk about in our next session. Before we start that, I would like to give the floor to the most distinguished panel that we have here today. I would like to start off by giving the floor to His Excellency Sheikh Shakhbout bin Hayyan Al Nahyan, Minister of State at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates. You have the floor, Minister.
Ahmed, thank you very much indeed. It's a quite quick introduction and unexpectedly to be the first one to speak. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to extend my warmest greetings to the distinguished panelists and, of course, those who have honored us here with their presence. So thank you all very much for coming, and I do hope you have a fruitful and an enjoyable time here in this event. Excellencies, as being member of the government, I haven't got the liberty to speak on top of my head, hence why I'll be reciting the speech here. Excellencies, first of all, I'd like to express our sincere appreciation to Hedayah for organizing this timely event, which the UAE is pleased to co-sponsor nearly 8 years ago to the day since the adoption of Security Council Resolution 2178 and 7 years after the establishment of the Madrid Guiding Principles. The international community continues to face difficulties in addressing the evolving challenge of foreign terrorist fighters, and in particular, their rehabilitation and reintegration into society. Today's discussion is an opportunity to assess progress to date and identify constructive ways forward. I would also like to thank Hedayah and its chairman, His Excellency Dr. Ali Naimi, for their vital work as the center approaches its 10th anniversary. God, it's been that long, and it's been like ages. Hedayah, which is headquartered in Abu Dhabi, the capital city of the United Arab Emirates, is global in orientation, yet guided by local sensibilities and need to be in building the capacity of member states to counter extremism and terrorism. We look forward to its continued excellence and achievements in this field. Excellencies, the UAE continues to unequivocally condemn the recruitment of foreign terrorist fighters as one of the most dangerous elements contributing to the spread of terrorism worldwide. As such, the UAE supports international efforts to stem the flow of foreign terrorist fighters and deny them safe havens. The international community also has taken remarkable actions to prevent terrorist acts, including by strengthening international legal instruments. Nevertheless, the UAE remains concerned over the acute and evolving threat posed by foreign terrorist fighters, particularly against the backdrop of conflicts and crises in various regions such as the Sahel and Middle East. The emergence of a next generation of terrorists and extremists must be prevented with a focus on individuals at immediate risk of radicalization. One notable example is Al-Hol camp in Syria, where more than 27,000 children are at risk of radicalization. Genuine efforts must be made to give these children and others in difficult situations hope for a more peaceful and prosperous future. An effective counterterrorism approach requires a multi-faceted strategy that addresses the life cycle of foreign terrorist fighters, from prevention to rehabilitation to reintegration. In particular, gender-responsive prosecution, rehabilitation, and reintegration measures must be tailored to the specific needs of particular communities. In conclusion, building the capacity of member states is crucial to strengthen their ability to prevent and respond to terrorist threats. The UAE commends the work of UNOCT, GCTF, and Hedayah, which builds the capacity of groups that prevent extremism to promote tolerance and peace, all while tailoring its strategies to different national and regional realities. The UAE will continue to work tirelessly alongside its international partners to counter terrorism in all its forms. We seek to share our expertise and learn from the best practices in this field with the ultimate aim of reinforcing our collective defenses against terrorism and extremism. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you all for joining today. We look forward to a constructive discussion on this critical challenge. I do thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I would like now to give the floor to Undersecretary General for Counterterrorism, UNOCT, Mr. Vladimir Voronko. You have the floor, Undersecretary.
Ahmed, thank you very much. First of all, my words of gratitude to Hedayah for very strong support of the activities of our office from the very beginning of our office. So I'm really very grateful and looking forward for continuing this very good level of cooperation. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, I would like to begin by warmly thanking Hedayah for hosting this event on the margins of the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Hedayah on its 10-year anniversary. Congratulations. During this period, Hedayah has implemented important programs and initiatives in vital areas of countering violent extremism, including the rehabilitation and reintegration of violent extremist offenders and affected family members. My office, the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, celebrated its 5-year anniversary on 15th of June of this year. So we're still very young, as you can see. I'm not speaking about myself, I'm speaking about office. The relatively recent establishment of both our entities shines further light on the need for enhanced global cooperation to counter terrorism and prevent violent extremism conducive to terrorism. Ladies and gentlemen, more than 3 years have passed since the territorial defeat of Daesh, yet many foreign terrorist fighters and their families remain stranded in Syria and Iraq. These individuals, who include family members coerced into traveling to the conflict zone, as well as victims of Daesh and nearly 30,000 children, are facing dire humanitarian, security, and human rights conditions. This situation is still deteriorating on a daily basis. Only few thousand of nearly 70,000 stranded have been repatriated, few thousand and 70,000. Still, these camps are full of these people, while others have escaped and made their way home or to the third countries. As the Daesh prison attack in Hasaka in January of this year vividly demonstrated, the risk of breakout is serious and ongoing. It is for both security and humanitarian reasons that the United Nations continues to urge member states to repatriate their nationals from northeast Syria, provide protection to the children, and hold adults who have committed crimes accountable. But to stop the cycle of radicalization to violence and to mitigate the risk these returnees might pose, comprehensive rehabilitation and reintegration measures are needed for those returning, whether they enter the criminal justice system or not. In its resolution 2396 of 2017, the Security Council underscored the need for all member states to assess and investigate these individuals for any involvement in criminal or terrorist activities, including by employing evidence-based risk assessments. It stressed the need to take appropriate action in compliance with relevant domestic and international law, including by considering appropriate prosecution, rehabilitation, and reintegration measures. The Security Council also noted that children may be especially vulnerable to radicalization to violence and in need of particular social support, such as post-trauma counseling, while stressing that children need to be treated in a manner that observes their rights and respects their dignity in accordance with applicable international law. We recognize that member states repatriating or seeking to repatriate their nationals from Syria and Iraq face a number of challenges which require coherent and multifaceted solutions. In response, the global framework for United Nations support on Syria-Iraq third country national returnees was formally launched on the margins of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly last year. The global framework translates into action the United Nations Secretary General's call for the United Nations system to leverage and coordinate existing mandates and capacities to support requesting member states whose nationals have returned or will return from Syria and Iraq. Through a partnership of 15 United Nations entities, the global framework offers a coordinated all-of-UN response to provide tailored, comprehensive, and coherent technical assistance to requesting member states with regard to protection, prosecution, rehabilitation, and reintegration of returning nationals. The global framework, which is already being implemented in Iraq, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, the Maldives, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, offers a way forward for requesting member states. Additionally, through the global program on prosecution, rehabilitation, and reintegration, my office supports member states in developing and implementing prosecution, rehabilitation, and reintegration strategies, taking into account gender and age considerations in line with the 7th Review Resolution of the Global Counterterrorist Strategy. The program continues to develop a number of useful knowledge products and tools, including the Compendium on Prosecution, Rehabilitation, and Reintegration Practices, which has compiled current practices from across the world and identified those that may be most promising. This compendium, which will be published by the end of this year, will make an important contribution to the field of prosecution, rehabilitation, and reintegration. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to reiterate the importance of the contributions made by the international non-governmental organizations like Hedayah to preventing and countering violent extremism conducive to terrorism. We know from experience that even in the most complex settings, with the right support, preventing and countering terrorism and violent extremism conducive to terrorism is possible, because together we can build a future without terrorism. To conclude, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our partners, to Hedayah, as well as to today's speakers and attendees for facilitating this timely dialogue. I look forward to learning more from today's exchange of experience, and I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Undersecretary, and thank you for UNOCT for being good friends of Hedayah, and thank you to you personally for being also a friend of Hedayah. Our next speaker is Mr. Irfan Saeed, Director of Countering Violent Extremism at the Bureau of Counterterrorism, Department of State, United States of America. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. In a little bit, you're going to hear from our Deputy Coordinator from Counterterrorism, Ian Moss, and he will share with you all of the very important policy priorities from the United States perspective. I have the enviable task of sitting here just to say thank you. So I look forward to spending the next couple of minutes saying thank you. So first, thank you, Dr. Ali, for your partnership, for the leadership. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Ivo. Thank you, everyone at the entire Hedayah team. It's the team that makes Hedayah go. I've been so fortunate to have been part of the Hedayah orbit for a very long time, and I've seen how strong of a team you have thanks to your leadership. So let me start by thanking you there. Let me also congratulate Hedayah. We're 10 years. 10 years. I remember some of the first conversations we were having in rooms much smaller than this, in hotels around the world with the idea of Hedayah. And as Ahmed, you noted, we've come so far, and you've come so far, and Hedayah has come so far in answering that call. So again, I get to say thank you. I can't tell you how happy and honored I am to be on this panel with all of you, with all of our old friends and colleagues, and of course, new friends and colleagues in the PCVE fight. The United States has come a very long way in our partnership with Hedayah. In the last several years, we've seen Hedayah grow into this amazing organization that they are today, from preventing radicalization and recruitment to supporting rehabilitation and reintegration of foreign terrorist fighters and their family members, to working on new issue sets, like countering what in the United States we call racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism, or REMV. You were one of the first to have this conversation, and I thank you for your leadership there. I also want to thank all of Hedayah's donors, particularly the United Arab Emirates, which hosts Hedayah, for making all of these important efforts possible. I'm proud to share that from the United States perspective, we support Hedayah directly to implement CVE work in places like Tunisia and Tajikistan. These efforts focus on things like developing and disseminating strategic messaging content for vulnerable communities and building resilience against terrorist content. Building capacity to understand and employ techniques to effectively counter terrorist use of the internet, again, an area where you were the forebearers. Designing a plan to promote local ownership and sustainability of activities beyond the life of the project. And for helping those respective governments and our respective governments implement their own CVE national action plans, which is an essential element. So, I said something in Malaga just a few months ago, and I think it bears repeating. Hedayah is a great organization, but it is a humble organization. So they are not really good at patting themselves on the back, and I will do that again today. From the blueprint of a rehabilitation reintegration center supportive families and CVE programs, the Strive Global Program, the Radical Right Counter-Narrative Collection, the ISIS Files Project, Massar 2.0. Like I said, the list goes on and on and on. So again, I thank you. I also wanted to make a special note that even the President of the United States, Joe Biden, has recognized and thanked Hedayah for their work. During his trip to the Gulf this past summer, President Biden met with President of the UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, and in that meeting commended Hedayah on the work that they are doing, especially on promoting religious coexistence to counter hatred and intolerance. I believe this acknowledgement by our U.S. President speaks volumes about the great work Hedayah has done and will continue to do. So again, I say thank you. I look forward to a really good conversation the rest of today, and the United States continues and will remain a steadfast partner to Hedayah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irfan. Our next speaker is Mr. David Cheria, Chief of Branch Counterterrorism Executive Director at CETAD. You have the floor, David.
Thank you, Ahmed, and thank you all for inviting CETAD to join this event. One of the advantages of being the fourth speaker is that you get to listen and learn and shape and amend your statement. One of the disadvantages of this role is that you have to erase many things that have already been said. And speaking after Irfan, who thanked so much to everyone in Hedayah for everything you do, I find it very repetitive to thank and detail all the thanks. So I will just add one big thank to Hedayah for your friendship to CETAD. Ahmed, Ivo, we go a long way, and you celebrate 10 years, which is an enormous accomplishment. Hedayah landed in the international scene just at the right time, when the challenge of foreign terrorist fighters and their returnees has blown and put all of us in a situation where nobody knew how to deal with this. And the presence of Hedayah, their leadership in the space of CVE, of reintegration, and all the activities that Irfan already mentioned, has gave the international community tools that are being used and are actually leading and paving the way for everyone. You mentioned, Ahmed, Resolution 2178, and we were not in this room, by the way. It was in UN, where we met day after day to support what has been enormous accomplishment of the international community. 2014 was also a challenging year with many differences among the members of the Security Council, and yet the sense of urgency and the sense of the threat united everyone and allowed the international community to bring Resolution 2178, in which all the areas of work of Hedayah are highlighted and stressed, and paved the way for many years of excellent cooperation between CETAD and Hedayah. I don't want to take too much of your time. I already did that. So I will just add a few words on how we see the topics of today's meeting, the issues of rehabilitation and reintegration. We find them to be that we can all agree that rehabilitation is a core objective of incarceration pursuant to criminal conviction, and in the world of, in the current counterterrorism landscape, it is also a critical part of member states' approaches to prosecution, rehabilitation, and reintegration. Both were mentioned in Resolution 2178, and later on, as US Chief Voronkov mentioned, in Resolution 2396. The field of rehabilitation is one of the complex challenges, and thanks to institutions like Hedayah, we are able to learn from the experts. We also learn and share from the experience of countries, what works, what doesn't. Nobody yet found a perfect solution, a pill that a person takes and he becomes rehabilitated and reintegrated. Many countries have tried, many countries have failed, and we all need to learn from each other and from each other's experience. And in this regard, the work of Hedayah is leading the work of many others by guiding us on what works, what doesn't, and how can we improve. How can we all improve? At its core, and it should be stressed too, rehabilitation is also very much a human rights challenge. How to do it in a way that respects the individual autonomy, the individual's freedom of religion, conscience, and opinion. And this is something that our colleagues in Hedayah and we ourselves at CITED are very conscious of. Rehabilitation that does not respect the human rights and the fundamental freedoms will probably, beyond everything else, not be successful. So thank you very much again for inviting CITED. We look forward to this discussion today, and we look forward to another 10 years of very strong partnership with you, Ivo, Ahmed, and with the rest of the Hedayah team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, David. As you mentioned, we go way back, even perhaps maybe before Resolution 2178. Our last speaker for today's session, for this session, is Mr. Masoud Kuch, Deputy Director General for Security and Intelligence, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Turkey. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. As David mentioned, I also enjoyed my time to make some amendments to my statement, so this is the advantage of being fifth speaker, I think. Excellencies, dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to be one of the co-hosts of this event today. As one of the co-founders of the Global Counterterrorism Forum, Turkey attached significance to the essential role played by Hedayah. Hedayah has become an indispensable actor, providing valuable contributions to rehabilitation and reintegration efforts by capacity building support and research initiatives. As we all know, the world today is facing an increasingly sophisticated, complicated threat of terrorism. Global developments, including technological advances, transformed this threat. The COVID pandemic provided a fertile ground for twisted ideologies targeting vulnerable communities. We witness a trend of attacks perpetrated by small cells or lone actors who have loosely affiliated with terrorist organizations, but they have been inspired by the narratives disseminated by them. Terrorists in one country are now able to inspire, recruit, and radicalize individuals in other countries to commit terrorist acts. While the rule of law-based security measures, such as intercepting, deterring, and prosecuting terrorists, remain as the fundamental pillar of counterterrorism efforts, a broader approach is needed to prevent the terrorist groups from disseminating extremist narratives and to make our societies, especially vulnerable groups, more resilient against this threat and to rehabilitate the radicalized ones. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to the issue. Countries have developed different responses to the challenge of rehabilitation and reintegration of the radicalized individuals. It is important to provide an environment that allows different parts of society, including community leaders, media, non-governmental organizations, researchers, and the private sector to participate in programs on countering terrorism, rehabilitation, and reintegration for an effective strategy. A comprehensive strategy should involve a whole-of-society approach. It is vital to ensure that all at-risk communities are adequately engaged with, and also that entire communities, ethnic or religious groups, are not stigmatized. In this respect, it is imperative to gather and share experiences, good practices, and lessons learned on the rehabilitation and reintegration of violent extremists and their family members. That's why we deem this event as an important contribution to the ongoing work in this area. Turkey, my country, will continue to support Hedayah and its work. Thank you.